New year, new you, right? And after a year like we've just had, I think we'll all take anything new we can get. So let's kick off this year with some awesome new shoes. Today, we're supported by Zenz by Isotoner, and I love the Zenz line. It's built for moms on the go, just like me. Zenz combines the versatility of a casual sneaker with the comfort and coziness of your favorite pair of slippers. Right now, I'm wearing the knit bootie in the evening sand color. And everywhere I go in these, someone asks me about them because they are super cute. They're also 50% lighter than traditional shoes, and they're built with this supportive memory foam technology. They are truly the best slip-on shoe. As an extra special gift for you, the listeners, my friends at Isotoner are giving you 35% off Zenz and Isotoner for the next 2 weeks. Just head to isotoner.com and use the code BRILLIANT35. I'm Cherylanne Skolnicki, and this is Brilliant Balance, the show for working women who are ready to shine. Each week, I bring you ideas, inspiration, and insight on balance, business, and getting it all done gracefully. You ready? Let's be brilliant. This is episode 232 of the Brilliant Balance podcast, closing the gap between desire and doability. Well, hello there. Welcome back. I was thinking about a time during this holiday break. So, we're recording this, it's March. I think this is going to air in April. And I was thinking all the way back to the December holiday and a time that I was having a conversation with my 17-year-old trying to illustrate an idea. And I had this insight, this kind of phrase that I'm talking about today came to me in that conversation. And we were talking about the gap between wanting something, like so badly really wanting it, and then knowing or feeling like we can't make it happen. And that turns out to be a very common experience. So I was parenting my way through this topic, and then I realized I was thinking about it in my own life. I realized I was coaching women and using this same framework. It came up with both of my other children at various times. I talked to my husband about it. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is a theme that we could get into in the podcast. And here we are today. So this gap, which I'm calling the gap between desire and doability, let me give you a couple of examples that I think illustrate the point, and then think about in your own life, where might you be facing this gap? So the example that I was using originally to illustrate the point with my daughter, and listen, here's my parenting tip. If you want to teach a lesson, use a metaphor, right? Find a story that's about somebody else that is relatable because it's usually a little less emotionally charged. So we were talking in this case about the hypothetical star soccer player. Someone who she is the star on her high school's team. She is definitely going to take that team to states this year. She's so pumped kind of about how the season's going to go. And then she tears like her ACL or whatever, has some injury that is season ending, right, in her senior year. And she can't play. And this soccer player, you can imagine being really devastated because her desire to play, her desire to be the person, like the captain leading that team to states, is so high. But the doability of that, right, her ability or her capability is not there with that injury. And that was the metaphor that I was using to sort of illustrate this gap, right? It's relatable that someone could have an experience where their desire to do something exceeds their ability to do the thing that they want. And think about this example. Think about how many grandparents dreamed about that chapter of spending time with their young grandchildren. Maybe seeing their first grandchild as a baby or having toddlers who they spent lots of time babysitting. And then COVID arrived. and they went into lockdown. And for long periods of time, there were grandparents who could not see those grandchildren that they had yearned for years and years. That's another illustration of this gap. Their desire did not wane at all, but the doability of, having that vision become a reality was simply not viable. Silly example, think about the little kid who goes to the amusement park with their family, maybe with some bigger kids, right? They're the younger sibling. They want to go on that roller coaster. Their desire is through the roof. They've been talking about it. Their siblings have been talking about it. And then they get to the line and they're not tall enough to get on the ride. So the desire is there, but the doability is not. The young mom who has the ambitious, big list of goals, things that she wants to just bang out in a day, a month, a season, but maybe she has 3 young children and there's 24 hours in a day. And there is a gap between the desire to fulfill all of those dreams and the reality of how much time is available to pursue them. And I could go on and on and on. And I might come back to other examples as we go here, but I want you to think about in your life, where have you been or are you now in that gap between desire and doability? Because I will tell you that is where suffering lives. Suffering lives in that gap where what we want and what we can do are not the same. So I want to talk about these elements, kind of define the equation a little bit here. Desire is how badly we want it, right? How strong the yearning is for the outcome, the activity, the thing that we want to happen. I remember when I was struggling with infertility, that, the desire to have a child versus the ability, the seeming doability of that felt like a gap that was hard to navigate, right? So the desire is how badly we want it. The ability is sort of the reality check on, is it happening or can we do it? And when our ability to do it exceeds our desire, we have no problem, right? Anytime that, what we want is actually less than what we can do, easy peasy. And when our ability matches our desire, when there's a good match between those, that's satisfaction, right? Or fulfillment. We're at a place where this feels like the vibe of our life is pretty aligned. But when our ability falls short of our desire, that is where there is the opportunity for suffering. And so before we resign ourselves to suffering, which sometimes is inevitable, candidly, I think we want to ask a couple of important questions, and that's what I'm going to unpack with you today. So the first really important question is, why is there a gap? Why? Why does this gap exist? And really, it's going to break into 2 pathways. One set of reasons why are that there is an unchangeable situation. And in that case, we're sort of walking down a path of acceptance. Okay, this is hard. This is hard work, but it's possible. This is about honoring the reality of being human. And sometimes it's about honoring the reality of things that are outside of our control. Right? Rules or circumstances, like, go back to the roller coaster and the kid who's not tall enough. Like, there's just a rule. It's put there for safety reasons. You can't really change it. So there's no pathway through that except acceptance. Honoring the reality of our human limitations, whether they are around our physicality or our time or our energy, is a pathway that we can maybe get our way out of suffering if we are essentially realigning our desire, reshaping our expectations to match our ability to deliver. This is sort of the finding the beauty in what is pathway, right? Casting a new vision and finding joy within that vision instead of railing against things that we cannot change. This really is a key skill. It's one that I probably don't talk about enough here. We probably don't talk about it enough in general. So I will probably circle back to that one in a future episode, sort of how do we get to that place? But it's also not the only frame, okay? Because sometimes that gap is due to a little bit more of a malleable situation, right? There's something in there that can be changed. Maybe not about the objective reality of the situation, but maybe about the way we're thinking about it, okay? And that requires us to ask deeper questions. We need to rethink our assumptions about why there is a gap or why we're calling it a gap, and then what we're going to do about it. So depending on the specifics of the example, and I shared a bunch at the beginning of the episode, and you can be thinking of your own, we're going to ask ourselves in each of those examples, is it an unchangeable situation where acceptance is really the only pathway through? Or is there something about it that maybe we can rethink that's going to give us a bit of emotional freedom because we've found a lens to look at this through that is not so fraught with suffering, okay? So I'm going to talk about 4 different sort of ways that we can maybe get unstuck if it is a somewhat more malleable situation. Do you ever find yourself saying, I just need a minute to breathe? While the whole idea of meditation can sound totally intimidating, I've found that stepping away from the chaos of life, even just for a few minutes, is incredibly restorative. So if you're short on time, but could use a few moments of peace right about now, listen to my 5-minute meditation for working moms. It'll help you clear your head and come back to your day feeling centered and refreshed. Head over to brilliant-balance.com/breathe. Press play and settle in for a few mini moments of peace right now. The first one is what I call the sticky story problem. The sticky story. Sticky story to me is where we have a very specific vision for how the thing we desire will play out. It's the how, right? How it's going to unfold, how it's going to happen, what it's going to look like and feel like. And because we can't see our way to that version of the story, we are feeling like we have an uncrossable chasm, right, between desire and doability. But what if there's another version of the story? What if the story is not so sticky, right? And there could be some new version of the story that actually is attainable, where our desire can align with our ability. This is kind of a riff on all or nothing thinking, and all or nothing thinking can be a really big problem, right? That cognitive rigidity where we are so attached to one version of how things are going to happen that we can't even see that there's this constellation of options available to us that could still allow it to happen, albeit with slightly different details and circumstances than we might have been envisioning. So when you find yourself in that gap and you're suffering in that gap between desire and doability, I want you to ask yourself, am I in a sticky story here? Do I have too much rigidity about the specifics of this vision? And could I get a little bit of freedom in there and maybe still attain the essence of what I want? Okay. Second thing to think about is, am I being governed by fake rules? Right? Air quotes, fake rules. So if we are being governed by fake rules, this is where we don't think it's possible because we have a belief that there's a rule that says we can't do it, right? And because we're looking at that and saying, that is not doable for me right now, or that is not doable for me ever, it means I can't do it. But sometimes those rules are in fact malleable, right? So we want to ask ourselves, who's making the rules? Who says those are the rules? How do I know that those rules apply every single time, right? Are there exceptions to those rules? Did I make them up myself, right? Did I think those are the rules? But actually, I don't even know. I've not even validated that those are the rules. And, sometimes we just are afraid to ask. Sometimes we're so sure that those are the rules that we don't even check to verify that that's true. I'll give you a silly example of this. I was trying to make a dinner reservation for a party of 7. That is not an easy thing to do, by the way. And I was thinking, well, maybe if I did this on not a Friday or Saturday, like maybe if I did a Sunday, it would be easier. And I was in Open Table and there were no ever availability for any party numbers on Sundays. So I was like, well, apparently these people are closed on Sundays. Well, guess what? Fake rule. Because when I picked up the phone and had a conversation with them, it turns out they are open 7 days a week. I really don't know why they don't use Open Table on Sundays, but I did. It was much simpler to get what I wanted, right? To match my desire for this silly example of a table for 7, because I didn't allow myself to be governed by a fake rule, right? That's a silly example, but think about how often we think, well, that's just the way it is. You're not allowed to do that. And I want you to ask, who says? Have you asked? Is it ever done differently? Because sometimes that makes it doable in a way that you didn't think it was. Third circumstance that can sometimes help you get unstuck or framework is what I call Lone Ranger issues. Lone Ranger issues. So sometimes we just think we have to be the Lone Ranger, right? We think that the only thing that makes this doable is if we do it all by ourselves with no help, no support, no training, right? We just have to know how to do everything right now. And if we don't, then there's this gap between desire and doability. I have fielded so many questions over the years from people who want to start a podcast. Their desire is high and they're like, I don't know how to do it. I don't think I can do it, right? Or they want to start a business and they're like, my doability is low. I'm never going to be able to make that happen. But the reality is they don't have to do those things alone, right? So this Lone Ranger problem is especially a helpful framework when there's a skill gap in the way or sometimes time. If the thing that's making it not doable is I don't have time to do this all by myself, or I don't have the skills to do this all by myself, you want to ask yourself, what would have to be true for this to be doable for me? Do I need training? Do I need help? Do I need guidance? Do I need to delegate or outsource something else in order to make room for this? This is a question about where are you in your own way? And if you're in a frame or a paradigm that says, I have to figure this all out on my own, and then I have to execute it all on my own, that can become such a burden that it's not actually doable. And if we're willing to open ourselves up to some help or training or support or mentorship, right, or guidance, all of a sudden things that we thought were impossible come within reach, which is a very powerful way of closing that gap. Okay, so we talked about sticky stories where we're in kind of that cognitive rigidity of all or nothing thinking. We talked about fake rules where we are operating under some set of rules that maybe aren't even real. We've talked about Lone Ranger issues. And the last one is the not yet pattern. So not yet is what we want to say to ourselves if maybe we're just being unrealistic about timing. So we might be saying, I can't do this. I don't know how, it's not going to work out. I can't make it fit. I'm not able to do it. And maybe the answer is it's just not your time yet. It can still happen, but maybe not on the timing that you originally wanted it to. So if we can release our attachment to timing by saying not yet, we may still be able to have the outcome that we want, right? That might be the only thing that we have to release is our timing expectation. And all of a sudden, the thing we want comes back within reach, like magic. So when you find yourself in any situation where your desire exceeds your doability, right? It exceeds your perception of, is this viable? Then I want you to ask yourself, first of all, is this gap unchangeable? And if it is, in the case of my original example of the soccer player it's her senior year and it is soccer season and the injury just happened, there's probably not a lot that young woman can do to heal that injury in time to play in her senior year soccer season, right? So there may be an acceptance that has to be there and in order to ease the suffering, like a new frame around what that vision looks like. But if the gap is closable, you want to be thinking about, okay, how could I close it? Do I need to release my sticky story? Do I need another version of what this could look like that is equally attractive to me, that is doable? Do I need to find out if I'm following fake rules? Are there some doors I haven't opened or questions I haven't asked that might actually make this doable when here I was thinking that it wasn't? Do I have a Lone Ranger issue where I am putting pressure on myself to figure it all out on my own and do it all by myself? And actually, I can do this if I have a little help. And have I explored the power of saying not yet? That in fact, I can do this, just maybe not on the timing that I originally thought was viable. So we talk about these challenges, I feel like, with different language all the time at Brilliant Balance. Like there are so many times where coaching comes onto someone's radar because they're stuck. They're stuck in that gap between what I want and what I think is doable. And truthfully, I think we often get to help people out of their Lone Ranger problems, where they've been trying to figure everything else out on their own. They've been really maybe governed by fake rules, or they've been really attached to a particular version of their story. And we're able to help them look at their problems through a slightly different lens. Like just holding that prism up and seeing it from a different side is very, very powerful, like outside eyes. So if you are stuck in one of these stories, come find me. Go to brilliant-balance.com. That's our website. There's a button you can schedule some time to chat. I would love to help you poke holes in your story and see if we can help you close that gap between desire and doability in your life. And wherever you are listening to this today, I want you to just pause for a beat and ask yourself, what is something that I really want that I have been telling myself I can't have? I've been telling myself it's just not doable. And I want you to challenge it and see, how can you alleviate the suffering? Is it an acceptance journey for you where you need to really redefine what is viable in a way that you make peace with that? Or is there something that you can kind of tease apart or reframe such that you might actually get what you've wanted all along? Give it some thought. And that is all for today, my friends. Till next time, let's be brilliant.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.